further ado, we're going to go ahead and start the meeting. We're going to play a short video in order to present how you can participate in the meeting, and then afterward we'll give additional information.
Welcome to the Professional and Vocational Licensing Virtual Board Meeting.
When the meeting begins momentarily, the chair will take a roll call, explain any specific rules for this particular board, and then move to public comment. The name of the board member will appear on the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. For instance, this is board member Y, and this is board member E. Public testimony will be accepted at the beginning of the meeting and before each agenda item. You can indicate that you are ready to testify by clicking on the Raise Hand button being circled by the mouse on your screen now. At the appropriate time, the board will recognize you to speak and ask you to unmute your mic as shown here. Again, public testimony will be accepted at the beginning of the meeting and before each agenda item. Public attendees will not be able to unmute their microphone until recognized by the board. Public attendees who are recognized to testify will be asked to identify themselves by name and their affiliated organization if applicable. Please mute your microphone when you are finished speaking as a courtesy to others and members of the board. Public attendees will not be able to unmute themselves after the testimony is completed unless recognized again after raising their hand. At some point during the meeting, the board may choose to move into executive session. When the board moves into executive session, the board members' microphones and video feeds will be turned off, and a similar screen as you see now will be displayed. When the board returns from executive session, their microphones will be turned on as well as their video cameras.
Welcome again to the Professional and Vocational Licensing Virtual Board Meeting.
At this time, the chair will call the meeting to order and take a roll call, as well as explain any additional rules that may be specific to this board.
Okay, to view the meeting and provide live oral testimony, please use the link at the top of the agenda. You will be asked to enter your name. The board requests that you enter your full name, but you may use a pseudonym or other identifier if you wish to remain anonymous. You will also be asked for an email address. You may fill it in this field with any entry in an email format, for example, jane@gmail.com. Your microphone will be automatically muted. When the chairperson asks for public testimony, you may click the raise hand button found on your Zoom screen to indicate that you wish to testify about the agenda item. The chairperson will individually enable each testifier to unmute their microphone. When recognized by the chairperson, please unmute your microphone before speaking and mute your microphone after you finish. If you cannot get internet access, you may get audio-only access by calling the phone number listed at the top of the agenda. Upon dialing the number, you will be prompted to enter the meeting ID, which is also listed at the top of the agenda. After entering the meeting ID, you will be asked to either enter your panelist number or wait to be admitted into the meeting. You will not have a panelist number, so please wait until you are admitted into the meeting. When the chairperson asks for public testimony, you may indicate you want to testify by entering star, then 9 on your phone's keypad. After entering star, then 9, a voice prompt will let you know that the host of the meeting has been notified. When recognized by the chairperson, you may unmute yourself by pressing star, then 6 on your phone. A voice prompt will let you know that you are unmuted. Once you are finished speaking, please enter star and then 6 again to mute yourself. For both internet and phone access, when testifying, you will be asked to identify yourself and the organization, if any, that you represent. Each testifier will be limited to 5 minutes of testimony per agenda item. If connection to the meeting is lost for more than 30 minutes, the meeting will be continued on a separate specific date and time. This information can be found on the board's website, cca.hawaii.gov/pvl/boards/speech/meeting schedule. Instructions to attend the Hawaii State virtual board meetings may also be found online at the board's website.
We will now take roll call. Members, when I call your name, please respond with present or here. Vice Chair, Dr. Dendi Rao, licensed member audiologist. Present. Ms. Lorna Hu, licensed member speech pathologist.
Here.
Dr. Brian Chen, public member and licensed otorhinolaryngologist.
Here.
And I, Chairperson Erin Farmer, speech pathologist, am also present. I will now call the meeting to order. The time is 2:18.
Chair. Before we get started. Sorry, for those who are coming into the meeting remote as members, could you please just note whether you are alone or not? We'll start with Lorna.
Alone.
Dr. Chen,
I'm alone.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to agenda item number 2, approval of meeting minutes for April 4th, 2023. Is there any public testimony regarding the meeting minutes of April 4th, 2023?
Thank you, Chair. This is Johnny. We do not have anyone requesting to provide oral testimony.
Thank you. Do board members have corrections, comments, or questions regarding the meeting minutes draft? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes for April 4th, 2022. Can we please have a second? Thank you. Do we need to make an adjustment on this agenda for the date or no?
Oh. Yeah, that should have been 23.
Just know that it's a typo.
Okay,
It should be for April 4, 2023.
okay,
That was the previous meeting.
okay, so,
Yeah, just update your motion.
okay. So, do you want me to just say that?
Just make a clarification that this is for April 4th, 2023.
Okay. So I just want to clarify that though our agenda says April 4th, 2022, the meeting minutes is actually for April 4th, 2023. We need to do the motion on.
No.
Okay.
Okay.
That's right.
We think we need to vote.
Takes a vote.
Yeah,
We need to take a vote. Okay.
so it'll be roll call.
Okay. Do we need roll call or can we do objection?
Well, that's true. We can.
Okay. Are there any objections for members present to approve the meeting minutes on April 4th, 2023? Okay, hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Moving on to the next agenda item, number 3, applications ratification. Is there any public testimony on this agenda item?
Thank you, Chair. We do not have anyone requesting to provide oral testimony.
Do any board members have any comments or questions regarding the ratification list? And I'd like to make a motion to approve the ratification list. May I get a second? Thank you. Are there any objections from members present? Okay, hearing none, the motion passes. Let's move on to agenda item 4. Review of advisory committee member candidate. So the board would like to review candidates for the Regulated Industries Complaints Office, or RICO, Speech Pathology and Audiology Advisory Committee to become effective January 1st, 2024. We don't need to go into the executive session. Right?
No, only if you need to discuss anything about the list, the person in question is who are on the list. But otherwise.
So we wouldn't have public testimony necessarily.
I mean, you
can
can
ask.
ask,
Okay.
but you can ask, but
Okay. Is there any public testimony on this agenda item?
Thank you, Chair. We do not have anyone requesting to provide oral testimony.
Thank you. Do any board members have any comments or questions regarding the ratification list? Okay, I'd like to motion to approve the list for Rico's Speech Pathology and Audiology Advisory Committee candidate. May I get a second? Second. Thank you. Are there any objections from the board? Members? Okay, the motion passes. Moving on to agenda item 5. License requirements, practice standards, and legislation and rules change. At this time, the board would like to review its statutes and the Hawaii Administrative Rules, Chapter 16 to 100, for areas that may need amendment or rules change to maintain functionality. In light of this, the board will begin 1 by preparing for the 2024 state legislative session, developing possible legislation or rules language it supports. 2, the board may also review its administrative rules chapter and prepare necessary or possible changes. And 3, the board may also reassess its current permitted interaction group created to research and develop telehealth statute or rule language, which may involve voting to update or dissolve the group and creating a legislative committee for the legislative session. Okay. Moving on to the first item under that agenda item. We'd like to first talk about the Speech Language Pathology Interstate Compact.
Sorry, Chair, we have a raised hand.
Oh.
Should I go?
Just finish what you need to, and then you'll accept the question. Or
And the public testimony first. Okay. Is this regarding public testimony on this agenda item?
Yes, it's a public testimony.
Hands to the raised hand.
Sorry, the attendee just lowered their hand.
Okay. Just for the attendees, we're gonna lead into each of these subtopics, and the chair will call for testimony. Then that will be the time to raise your hand, and then we can call it.
Okay, so let's start again. We'd like to start with the Interstate Compact for the Speech Language Pathology Interstate Compact. Is there any public testimony on this agenda item?
Thank you, Chair. We do not have anyone. Oh, sorry. We just got the raised hand.
Sorry.
It's Christina.
Okay.
I will switch it to panelist mode for you to present your testimony.
Good afternoon, Ms. Fuentes. Thanks for your attendance today. You may begin your public testimony at this time. Please be advised that you will have up to 5 minutes to provide comments on this agenda item.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having us. One thing I do actually just want to mention on the agenda, it says SLP, I see, but it is an audiology and speech language pathology interstate compact. So it does go by ASLP, yeah. So I actually do have some colleagues with me just to help even answer any questions for the board. We know there were some concerns with the bill 317 that went by, and so we do have the ASLP Interstate legal counsel with us. That's Nahale Kalfas, I believe she's on, and Susan Adams from ASHA, who have been working with all of the other states that have passed the legislation for this. I know, one of the main concerns, is that the compact doesn't have the commission completed and the bylaws, but I think that it would benefit Hawaii to get involved now, because then we would have a seat at the table and have input on the fees and any charges or anything like that, and would help, for us to be able to have a voice there and commit to helping establish this interstate compact that would do so well for our state. I know that as the president of the Hawaii Speech Hearing Association, we get a lot of emails and comments from licensee applicants about kind of the timing of everything going through and getting their licenses. So I don't know, you know, the whole process of you guys having to do that, but if we're only ratifying at meetings, you know, it's been 7 months since the last board member meeting. And so if people are waiting, we're just not getting the licensees to be able to provide services where they're desperately needed. I know my private practice has a huge wait list, as many other ones as well. So, you know, kind of our push for trying to get this legislation through and working through any of the concerns so that we can be on that commission and creating those bylaws. But if I can give the floor to Nahale, I think that she can probably address some of the specific questions that we have in the testimonies for you guys.
Nahale.
Hi, Ms. Nahale. Thank you for joining us. Would you like to start your testimony now?
Sorry, Johnny, can you bring Nahale into panelist mode? Thank you.
Hello, board. It is a pleasure to speak to you today, especially because I am Hapa Hapa. So quarter Hawaiian, my family's from Waimea on the Big Island, and it's a pleasure to speak to you again. I am the legal counsel for this speech pathology and audiology interstate compact. I'm also legal counsel to the Council of State Governments. I also represent the Occupational Therapy Interstate Compact, the Counseling Compact Commission for Licensed Professional Counselors, and I'm the interim compact counsel for the Physician's Assistants Compact. I do some work with the Nurse Licensure Compact Commission as well, so I'm happy to answer any questions. There are a few points I'd just like to bring to bear very quickly. I know your time is precious, so I don't want to take much of it, and I appreciate the opportunity again. This particular interstate compact is the same in form and function as most of the compacts that you're familiar with. I do know that the Interstate Medical Licensure Compact did pass in Hawaii, and I want to say that that is a wonderful compact. I applaud the prescience of the state in doing that for a greater access to competent care. It is a little bit different from our compact in that what is issued is a piece of paper, or what is issued is an actual license. There is no difference in between a license and a privilege for interstate compact purposes. That's pursuant to both the compacts and the contracts clause of the United States Constitution. And I will say that in addition, what is a little bit different between that compact and this particular compact is that this is a mutual recognition compact. So much like your driver's license, so long as you have a license in good standing in your home state, you abide by the rules of the road in other states that you wish to drive, you don't have to stop at every DMV and get a new license in order to operate there. You do have to let Hawaii or any other member state know that you are practicing there. You do have to pass any jurisprudence exam required by any member state, and you absolutely must abide by the scope of practice of any member state's laws and regulations. And you're required to be aware of those and to abide by them. And I say that because there's a greater prosecutorial net. I still prosecute for a licensing board for speech pathology audiology licensing board in North Carolina, where I'm from. And the prosecutorial net extends so that if a licensee engages in an action that is contrary to the Practice Act in any state, that action may be used as though it occurred in your state under the compact. So you may stop that action from occurring in your state, even though it hasn't occurred yet. So there is a little bit greater public safety net there. There are differences in that there's a data system that is the brain of the Compact Commission. It allows each member state board to go into, they are required and must upload all information as required by the compact laws and rules. Those rules are just like with your board, they are narrowly tailored to what is authorized by the compact. The commission may not expand or reduce the scope of practice. That is left to the sovereignty of each member state. That's very federalist in notion. So the compact merely says we can create rules to administer and implement the compact according to its terms, to its narrow terms, a very narrow rule promulgation. But what you do is you upload information to the data system. Therefore, all member states are learning from each other what they need to know. All member states can automatically check and vet a licensee, and the home state is responsible for maintenance of CE requirements, for maintenance of renewal cycles, for ensuring compliance with the terms, for ensuring that there have not been any sort of disciplinary actions or other criminal, relevant, civil, et cetera, violations. So the data system is the brains. You have already had your candidate who may serve just in a privilege function, not actually as a new home state licensee, but someone operating in Hawaii on a privilege. You know they're there, and they have been vetted by the home state from which they come. Again, if they violate your laws or regs, you may suspend their privilege in accordance with your due process laws in Hawaii. They need not have committed that in your state. You can utilize what they've done in another state. And there are a couple other points I really want to make, but more importantly, to be respectful of your time, I want to defer to my colleague, Susan Adams, to catch what I haven't answered, and also to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Hey, Susan, before you start, and Johnny, if you don't mind bringing Ms. Adams up into panelist mode, please. Can you please go over the requirements to practice in the state again? I didn't catch all of them with Nahali.
I am sorry, I missed what you were saying because it was switching over to take me out into the panelist.
Sure. Let me reiterate. Could you just go over the requirements again one more time to practice in a member state? I didn't catch all of them when Nahali was speaking.
Yeah, so every state has to abide by the same requirements, licensing requirements. So for an audiologist, that's, the doctoral degree, the clinical practicum, and the praxis exam. For the speech language pathologist, that's the master's degree, the clinical practicum, the clinical fellowship, and the praxis exam. So all states have to require that of a licensee. All states currently do, except for North Dakota. And they are currently not eligible for the compact because of that reason. So, the compact is just going to be a way to make it easier for people to practice across state lines without having to get a new state license in every state that they want to practice in. It's just going to give you a privilege to practice. So as Nahali mentioned, the home state where you live, work, pay your taxes is going to be the one that's going to vet your vet whether or not you can join the compact and get a privilege to practice. So if the home state deems you acceptable for getting a home state license, then all the other compact states will recognize that and will allow you to get a privilege to practice in that state. We currently have 29 states that have joined. Right now, we have an RFP out from the Compact Commission to get the data system and created. And then once that's done, which we're hoping will be sometime maybe mid 2024, then member states will can begin getting their systems hooked up to that centralized system. And again, enhancing consumer protection, states will be able to check and make sure that people have that home state license, that they're eligible for the privilege to practice. And if there's any disciplinary actions, it will be uploaded to that system, which would let all the other member states know that this person has a disciplinary action. And I know, Christopher, we talked a lot in the last couple of years about the compact. And you know, we had the bill that was in the legislature last year. You know, we're hopeful to get it introduced again this year and, you know, get passage in Hawaii. I think it would be helpful for the state. You know, I'm sure that Christina can talk about shortages and the need for practitioners in the state. So this would be an easier way of letting people get into the state and begin practicing.
Susan, may I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Did you say that the Cs were required in order to be a part of this compact?
No, the compact does not talk about the Cs at all. The Cs kind of mirror what state licensure already is with those requirements that I talked about earlier. But the Cs are not a requirement to participate in the compact in any way.
And one more question.
Mhm.
This database, all licensees, regardless of if they want to practice only in the state or practice elsewhere, their information all would be uploaded into this database. That's
Not necessarily. It depends on, I think that decision hasn't been made yet because we don't have the database set up, created for this compact yet. But there has been talk, some states want to be able to upload all the information just so they don't have to, you know, handpick which ones do get uploaded. Other ones only want to upload people that are seeking a privilege to practice. So that's something, you know, that if Hawaii were to pass the legislation to adopt the compact, that you could be part of those conversations and figuring out how that should work.
Hi, Susan, this is Christopher. Could you also go over the requirements for the member states in administrating the compact? I know that there is language that requires states to do a federal background check. And we don't currently have that capability with this board. But I believe there was something else that Nahali had brought up, and I failed to get it down in time.
Well, Nahali can text me and tell me what else she was talking about. But for the background check, yes, you do have to have an FBI fingerprint-based background check. You know, each state has that requirement. But we don't expect the state to have that in place at the time that they join the compact. You know, it's great if that's something that your state can add without much trouble, but we do know that, you know, the FBI has had differing opinions about the ability to do that depending on the region of the country, the state, the compact. They haven't really given us a set language that we're supposed to use to be able to implement this. So there's actually a federal bill, it's called the Federal Share Act, and it makes it so that the FBI can share, or so that compacts and other organizations can share that background information more easily. We're hopeful that that will get through Congress, but again, we know what Congress is like these days, and you know, we still want to move forward with the compact because there are states similar to, you know, our compact PT that are issuing privileges practice in states, and it is, you know, the compact is in operation. So again, it's not every state that's having a problem, it's not every compact that's having a problem, but we could definitely talk to, you know, the authority, you know, whatever authority does the background checks in Hawaii to see, you know, what we can do to help them facilitate that process.
Sorry, I see a hand. Nahali, I'm hoping that she can.
Oh, Nahali said you also mentioned about the FBI fingerprinting. And I guess like who would pay for the background check. We have heard states say that they are going to that the applicant would have to pay for that. So it wouldn't be something the state would be responsible for paying.
That is included in language too, right? That to some degree the states can set some.
Yeah, there's states can have a privilege to practice fee that they can charge. And that's really because we understand that some states might lose licensing fees if people choose to get a privilege to practice instead of the full state license. We do believe that there would be less work for the board if the privilege to practice, if an applicant was getting a privilege to practice, because all of the primary source verifications would already be done. The board wouldn't have to do those. But the board can charge a fee for the privilege to practice in order to recoup some of that cost that might be lost otherwise.
So it kind of goes right out. Oh, okay. And so I can't remember who it was, brought up that the commission hadn't been established yet. Is there any information on that?
So, yeah, so the commission actually has been established.
What has, okay.
Yeah, it has. So we have 29 member states. They each have 2 representatives on the commission. And then we have 5 additional members, elected members. So we have an executive committee currently, a rules committee, and a finance committee. We have a budget. We are getting ready to hire an executive director to do the day-to-day operations of the compact. We have bylaws, we have rules, we have a budget. We are ready to go, except for we don't have that data system. So yeah, I mean, if YA were to join, they would have the opportunity to help, create some of these decisions about how the compact is going to work moving forward.
Is it Nahari who has her hand up? It's just a blur.
Yeah. Sorry, Johnny, can you bring in Nahale to panelists, please?
Thank you. And it's lovely to hear my name pronounced correctly. Thank you so much. I just wanted to add a few more things that I think may be useful. As Susan said, your state chooses the fee they want to charge for issuance of privileges. Your state chooses any renewal of privilege fee you may choose to charge. Your state may require a jurisprudence exam if you like. Your state, and this is important, your state's actual, how you treat your home state licensees who have no interest in joining the compact, it's irrelevant to us. We are only interested with the compact only speaks to those applicants who choose to use this pathway. This is an additional pathway, and it's been very attractive to legislators because it is an additional pathway, because it does seem to break down some barriers to licensure portability and to safe practice and continuity of care, et cetera. So you choose what you do with your home state, folks. Obviously, with regard to the compact, you look to that compact law and make sure that you're following that with regard to those applicants. But with regard to your home state applicants who have no interest in joining the compact, that's really none of our business. Many legislators that I speak to in the testimony that I do amongst all the member states and potential member states is that this is a great recruitment tool to recruit particular, a more mobile generations sort of thing. So it's a great recruitment tool, can be a great retention tool for folks who are looking to retire, be it from the military, et cetera. So it can be very helpful in that nature. I know that, I'm assuming, I don't have any evidence on this, but I'm assuming Hawaii has some shortages like most states do. I know we lost a lot of speech language pathologists, particularly during COVID. And so this is a way to create a greater access to care. I saw that on your agenda, you have a telehealth piece later. So I wanted just to speak to 2 things. Number 1, the compact does speak to telehealth. Telehealth is allowed in the compact. Many of the compacts that came after yours in the drafting, they don't even speak specifically to telehealth because they just deem that to be another modality of practice. So when I say another modality of practice, I mean subject to the same standard of care, the same ethical duties, all of the things that are required in face-to-face. If it's an inappropriate form, inappropriate modality of practice, then that's not appropriate. And that, that would be something that could be disciplined, et cetera. So, it's another modality of care. I think we've all learned it's a little hard to walk that back since COVID and some of the relaxations. However, this at least lets you know who is in your state under the compact trying to practice telehealth. So at least you know who's in your state practicing, which as a prosecutor for a board in North Carolina, that was a real problem for me during COVID. I didn't even know who was practicing into my state. So this is helpful. I also wanted to share, again, as Susan said, the vetting that occurs by the home state that is assuring and is required. There's compliance committees that will be stood up shortly after we begin issuing privileges. There's no need to look behind that primary source verification that occurs with the home state. There will be compliance checks. We are lucky that we come behind nursing and physicians and other MPTs, so we have tools that we know how to check compliance. I also want to say that, as Susan said, the current status of the commission is that they are stood up. They have passed substantive rules, substantive bylaws, have FAQs and policies. If you have a moment or if you just need a sleeping tool, go onto our website. We have our annual report. It will tell you what we've done, where we are, our funding, our budgets. All of our committees meet monthly. Occasionally, they take a month off, but by and large, rules, executive committee meet monthly and sometimes more often with special executive committees. So there's a wealth of information on that webpage. But if there's anything that you need, we remain available. It would be, the crown jewel for us to have Hawaii join our compact. We would like to have you at the table. We believe that access to care is a very real emergent crisis. We believe that this is a safe way to handle that and to continue in terms of, providing competent care. And the background checks, I just wanted to let you know, there are many states that don't currently have, many member states that do not currently have a background check requirement. North Carolina, that I counsel, is one of them. So our intention will be, as we see where the SHARE Act passes, we will make our decision on how we move forward with that, because it would be a lot easier just to have it federalized so we don't have to make that fight. But if it isn't, we will begin that work. The commission will not find you out of compliance and kick you out. They know that's not an easy issue. So we will take that as we find it and work with states to pass that. And we're seeing a little traction, even with Pennsylvania, which has been the hardest state. They're working together. It looks like there's going to be some real movement by legislators in Pennsylvania, and that's been the most difficult state. So I don't see that to be a big problem. The rules that the compact passes with regard to compact applicants and privilege holders, those rules, you don't also have to adopt as rules, because the compact in its body says that the compact rules apply to compact participants and compact member states. You may choose to adopt them as your rules, but you're not required to do that for them to have force and effect. And the reason that is true is because your legislators, when they voluntarily enact this legislation, agree to that. And that's a very common principle, U.S. Supreme Court law. We have many legal briefs on this if anyone needs some verification on this, but compacts traditionally have had and continue to have unfettered ability to do that narrow rulemaking to administer the compact. Thank you for letting me talk. Thanks so much. And again, here for any questions.
I have a question actually, maybe for us. I vaguely remember, so correct me if I'm wrong, that RICO had a concern with discipline if there was a licensee that was subject to disciplinary action, being able to turn over that information to another state. Does that fall under anybody's?
Yeah, I think that what you're specifically referring to is Hawaii's own licensees joining the compact.
Right.
Because
So
we would be
turning,
retaining their information.
right. So let's say they are, we become a compact state. They have a privilege to practice in California. Something goes awry, and then we have to turn over their information to California if it occurred in that state. Is that what they were concerned about?
I'm seeing by Nahale's nod that that sounds close to correct.
Okay,
May I briefly respond, Chris? And
Yes, sure. Sure, is that okay?
I'm sorry. May I respond? I'm sorry.
yes, please.
Okay, so the answer is because the compact becomes your state law when enacted, the compact language itself says that because the compact is both a compact and a contract, because they're allowed under both the compact and contracts clause of the U.S. Constitution, because it's both, all member states must feed this information into the data system. So to that effect, any conflicting Hawaii state law is superseded only to the narrow extent of the conflict so that you can maintain your contractual obligation to your fellow members. And that's to make sure that we have the public protection component. Very common piece. Every single compact has this language. No compact is different. Again, unabused, the Supreme Court law has stood with regard to this ability for a compact to supersede a conflicting state law to the extent of the conflict. The only difference is if the Hawaii state constitution, if your constitution has a conflict with the compact, that may be a difference. And that's something I would discuss with your board counsel, with your AG, whomever, and have. And, we've briefed those matters, very common for us to brief these matters to discuss through it. But by and large, if there's a conflict, the compact supersedes with regard to compact participants only. And why? Because Hawaii chose to enact that as its state law. And frankly, it's state law after your Practice Act was enacted. So that's in place with regard to the compact only, not with regard to non-compact participants. I hope that helped.
Do any board members have any additional comments or questions?
Could I maybe ask some questions to the board members? So, as they stated, it doesn't sound like an FBI background check needs to be established prior to joining or even at the instance of joining. It can happen after. And I understand the context, Nahale, with regard to the national law that, or not law, I say bill, sorry. That's, well, we've been talking about with the current state of Congress. Okay, I understand that. The other thing that I was going to bring up to the board members was the question of a jurisprudence exam. I've looked in the statutes, and Chris, you can check me on this, but it doesn't look like the board has the authority to establish a jurisprudence exam. It looks like only exam catered towards the practice of SLP and audiology. Therefore, I mean, my suggestion would be that if this is the case, that this board, if this bill were to pass, once the safety of the public, there is the fee, but there is also the opportunity to do it, require a jurisprudence exam. Would that be something that the board would be willing to look at? Sorry, did members hear that from Vice Chair Rawl?
I said that I would prefer for it to be that way, where there would be some sort of examination or evaluation for people coming in, especially for audiology. I mean, speech pathology is a lot more broad field than audiology is, well, I'm pretty broad too, but I would like to see it because I do feel like there are a lot of things that aren't necessarily within the practice across every, even within our own state. So I would agree with that, yeah.
And to be clear, the jurisprudence exam would be to orient someone towards our statutes and laws, about the practice only, really, or in any other related laws. Like, there might be certain laws within the Department of Health that need to be adhered to, for example. So, okay, I just wanted to ask that question about it, because that is something that probably would need a statutory change. Also, we would need to include the background check in a statutory change in our own chapter. Because I think at that point, it just would make sense to just be databasing everybody applying. So, that said, I know that we have our internal processes right now that are going on with trying to sort of address this increase as we've all been seeing state to state applications of licensure. And I think this is kind of tying into the note that I think I had with Christina, and that is that one question I guess I would have, if a member state joins and they require a fee and they require a jurisprudence exam completion, what is the compact looking at as far as time wise for licensure? Because right now, the majority of our license applications are via ASHA CCC. We do have ABA applicants for audiology. More times than not, though, they just kind of lean on their doctoral degree, which we have a pathway for. So as long as they have their practice exams, then and everything's good in other states. So our ASHA applicants do not need to come to the board meeting to be approved. The board ratifies the list, but the ASHAs do not come to the board. And in fact, the clerk, based on a current CCC verification, proof of no disciplinary actions or criminal convictions in other states, or this one, they can actually move to push the license through on that based on a delegation that the board has provided PVL. So I know that there are delays with regard to, like, say, deficiencies, something like that. We're still waiting for all the documents to come in, and it can push the time. But really, in general, I'm not seeing large wait times for licenses with regard to speech pathologists only. As far as audiologists, I'd have to look into that. We don't have as many applicants for audiology by far. So I would have to look at that a little deeper, but for the most part, the bulk, if you saw our ratification list for today's meeting, pretty much speech language pathology. So, and it's ASHA more times than not. So I was wondering, that's a long spiel just to ask, what does it look like from the compact side with if someone needs to take a jurisprudence exam and pay the fees and go through the processing of allowing their privilege to make its way into life?
Oh, I'm still clear to speak? Thank you. Yes, so thank you so much for the question. I will say that first, I want to address the jurisprudence exam very quickly. Many states have it, many states don't. The jurisprudence exam for the states that have it, by and large, it's open book. Some states have some limit in terms of time limit, how many times you can take it, open book, before you have to pass it. Many states have no limit. So I don't know what that means in terms of if we were, if I were ever called to question on what's the evidence basis of the utility of that, I don't know how I would answer that. Doesn't mean that it's not a good check mark to understand that people know your scope of practice, Hawaii's scope of practice. I mean, I don't know if you have something specific with regard to fees or, that each state has some nuances. So that's fine. Physical therapy has allowed, with some states have allowed someone to go ahead, get the privilege, complete the jurisprudence exam within a period of days. part of the reason why they did that was what is so attractive to most legislators and certainly to the Federal Trade Commission about us doing compacts is that the turnaround time is always quicker. Some compacts, the turnaround time is day of for privilege. And that's because the primary source that's meaning the primary source verification has already taken place. The background check, the transcripts, etc. Disciplinary checks by the home state, that's occurred. So that's somebody coming into your state. Now, obviously, someone who's a Hawaii home state licensee, that's different because you're doing that vetting. So that probably does take longer. But for privilege seekers coming into Hawaii, that's typically faster because you go into this data system and you can see they're fine. You know, they're clear, or they're not. And so that's pretty simple. Like I said, some commissions choose to let that jurisprudence exam be done within a period of time. Some require it before. That really varies. And that's really something that the commission will make a decision on, and each state can weigh in. And each state, with regard to the jurisprudence exam, gets to say what their expectation is. Obviously, the thing we don't want to do is make a privilege as hard and as long to get as a license, because that's the whole point of it. And that's frankly why the Department of Defense puts so much money into these commissions and is going to, has helped subsidize to the tune of $10 million a year and will help with the data system, is because they need to see their military spouses being able to hit the ground running and getting back into their practices. They also feel very strongly about continuity of care and counseling in all fields for their military folks. So, the idea is to make it as quick as possible. I don't think, there are some rules. I'm thinking in nursing, there are some rules with regard, well, actually, most of the commissions have a turnaround time with regard to how quickly you have to okay a privilege. But what's really easy about looking at the compact language is if that applicant meets those criteria, there's no subjectivity to it. If they meet it, then you know that they can have the privilege. The only subjective thing, well, it's not really subjective, but would be the jurisprudence exam. And as I said, some PT has decided maybe that's not important to get up front. So you have some flexibility there. I don't want that to be a big worry piece. If that's your concern, I mean, that's something that the commission can work with the state on, but we certainly don't want any delay because commissions get really dinged when they don't turn around privileges very quickly, because that's something that is the benefit of seeking a privilege. So that's pretty important. And of course, with your driver's license, it's seamless. You don't do anything. Well, we decided in this compact, we wanted the member states to know who's in their state. You deserve to know who's practicing in your state. That's important to me as a prosecutor. So you are giving the authorization to the commission to allow that privilege. But it happens very quickly, and it happens because of that data system and because of that data system administrator who checks and makes sure that everything's been done. But the good thing is you as an administrator do not have to actually do that primary source verification for someone coming into your state under a privilege.
So they don't take the jurisprudence exam, how she was mentioning, to get waiver. Checks of action that require, is it the commission or is it
So I'm here. Sorry, are you having a hard time hearing? Sorry. So that was the voice of our other EO, Rochelle Baraki. She was asking who would be charged with confirming the jurisprudence exam completion. I'm assuming it's the state.
That's my assumption. With the data system not being built out yet, I don't know for certain, but it makes the most sense to me for that to be something through the member state portal, through the member state website where you do that. I mean, like currently in North Carolina, we have a jurisprudence exam for assistants. So we know when they've passed because it comes through the system. Now, if there's a way that Hawaii could interface with the data system in a way that once they pass, that information gets fed directly to the data system. We're trying to build the best data system possible. Unfortunately, we have two other commissions coming in from a money standpoint with us. So we'll be able to build a nice data system. So, if that's something that could happen electronically, great. If not, with PT, sometimes it's as simple as the state calls and says, this person passed. Now, I think that's incredibly inefficient. That's not my preference, but there are some states that have interface problems because their data systems are a little bit behind, and that's fine. Each commission works with them, but it could be as simple as someone making a phone call. It could be as elegant as your system interfacing with the data system to say that person's passed.
That is it. That actually brings up another point. Accessibility to the commission, while it may be okay for, say, Utah, for example. Trying to think of a state that's kind of central, but we are kind of further out. So our time frames are always going to be like I have 2 hours to contact the commission. So is it going to be extended hours? Like, for example, like our workday ends at 4:45, for example. So, or 4:30, sorry. I forget the time difference right now. Is it 6 now again? Or is it
I think we're only at 5 now. Is that correct?
5?
5?
It was 6.
If I may, Chris, I'll just say this, that the data system should contain everything you need to know. That does not mean you can't get a person. And I'm having a hard time recalling if it's, I think it's nursing, either nursing or IMLC has Guam, because territories are also allowed to come in if they qualify. Some qualify, some don't. But someone has Guam. And in that instance, I know for a fact, because I know the executive directors of both of those commissions, that they have very early morning, very late night conversations with those EDs, because your executive director is the face and the communication point of the commission. So can I promise that our ED is going to answer every call? Obviously I can't. I don't want to be disingenuous to you, but do I know that people work very hard when someone has a differing time zone? They do. I've seen, I've seen them work.
That's all.
Sure.
I have one question with the data sharing. So if we're supposed to be providing information on the licensing, how is the commission tracking licensees? Is it by a specific ID number that the commission assigns, or is it by social security?
That's a great question. This is a problem I'm having with a little more of an intense problem with some of my other commissions, because there are 1 or 2 states who aren't requiring socials. So that's part of why the compact language itself says, I want to make sure I'm not misstating, a social security number or a national practitioner identification number. So we tried to create 2 paths there, because some people, what we were told, though not all practitioners have an NPI, our understanding at the time of drafting was that you can get one for free. I don't know if that's true. That's what we were told by the professionals who were on one of the 32 stakeholder calls we had, because this came up during stakeholder calls. So there are 2 ways: social, NPI. Another commission is looking at an identifier through a professional association, but to my understanding that, not everyone does ASHA, so that didn't make sense. So NPI and social are what we have right now.
Lorna or Dr. Chen, do you guys have any questions?
No, I really don't. Some of the questions, no, some of the questions that were raised were already answered. Thank you.
Chris and board, again, thank you. Please, if something comes up after the meeting, during the meeting, we're here to answer your questions. So feel free to submit to us. Susan's a great contact to go through. She has a lot of the very profession specific information, which is why I'm so grateful to have her on this call with me. But just know we remain available to answer any questions. As I said, it would be fantastic for us to get you in the compact, and we'd really like to see you here. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. I just actually have one more question. I remember this, and I may have misremembered. With the medical compact, it doesn't necessarily provide authority to use the privilege in the state, but it provides the governor authority to accept the compact. Is that correct?
I
Or
do
is-
not believe so. And let me
Okay.
tell you why, but I understand where that misunderstanding may come from. But essentially, the medical licensure compact, instead of being a mutual recognition compact, which is what the driver's license is, each state mutually recognizes the authority of the home state license and says, we'll give you a privilege so long as you're in good standing in your home state and everywhere else, and you abide by our rules of the road. That's what ours is. The IMLC Interstate Medical Licensure Compact is essentially like an expedited endorsement compact. It essentially works the same way because the home state still does the vast majority of the vetting. But the difference is doctors are paying close to the same amount to get a license in each state. So that made a lot of sense to physicians, not to the other professions who can't afford those pretty exorbitant fees from state to state. But it did rush their ability to get those licenses. So it's almost like pre-check. Like, in a mutual recognition compact like this one, we're all going to get to the same place. It's just with expedited licensure, you might get there a little faster. It's a little bit like the TSA pre-check line, but we're all doing the same things. It's just one. So theirs is licensure a little bit faster, but it works the same. Their data system works in the same way.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Any other points for discussion from the board members? Okay. Okay. Thank you very much for attending and answering all of our questions. That really clarified a lot for us. I really appreciate it. If there's nothing else we need to do with this at this time, right? In terms of
Right now,
Yeah.
I believe that the board has its permitted interaction group. So this is information that they can discuss. If you would like to update the permitted interaction, so because we have had changes, you can. But you could have a permitted interaction group for your rules and telehealth, and then legislative session is another committee. So that's all. I was just going to bring that up before you guys go through the rest of these.
before we go through the rest.
If you want.
Yeah, okay. So currently we had a change in members for our permitted interaction group for the legislature committee. So, but it's not on our agenda. So how do we talk about this?
Well, on agenda item 5, I did include that you guys may do those
right.
changes or vote to create.
Okay.
But that's neither here nor there. You can decide to do that. So for sub item A, if you wish to discuss that specific compact, you can make a permitted interaction group specifically for that, or you can tie it into the legislative committee. That's all I wanted to say. Sorry. And that could be for B, C, and D, and EF as well. It would allow you to talk about this outside the meeting,
Right.
leading up to the next meeting, which is going to be, I believe, the 30th of January. This will be, just for our attendees as well, this meeting will be just after the closing of bill introduction, so we will be able to form positions. The board will be able to form positions on the bills that are introduced for the 2024 session.
Okay, so Dr. Rao, Lorna, and Dr. Chen, do you guys believe we should have a separate permitted interaction group for the interstate compact, or we just do one for all legislative topics? Can you guys hear that? Are you guys okay with doing just one permitted interaction group for all topics, for legislative topics?
Would you recommend that, Chris?
Yes, I would actually.
Okay.
I think that, based on the agenda, the board does have a lot of, work with regard to the statutes and rules. Where not only is the compact affecting that, but also telehealth. The board's recent conversations on SLIPAs, also, our own provisional licensure for, fellows, so. I think that there's a lot to talk about, and it would make sense to just keep it in one group for one, meeting.
Okay, thank you.
So the minimum numbers for a permitted interaction group is 3, is that correct?
Yes, because it's 7 for the board. So quorum is 4. That would mean 3 is what would be allowed up to.
Okay. So currently, since Dr. May stepped down, we have Dr. Rao, you are still in the permitted interaction group? As your schedule allows, right?
Yep.
Okay, and then I know myself, and then Via Fernandez.
Oh, I wouldn't.
How
be
does
part of
that, you know, okay,
it. I can be there,
so,
but
so do we need to have 3?
you don't have to.
Okay.
It just has to be under quorum.
Lorna, I know that you, had a lot of interest in the SLIPA topic. Did you want to be a part of the permitted interaction group?
Sure, if time allows, but
I mean, I can
would
explain.
would you be a part of it?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I am.
Okay.
Yes,
Sure.
typically, I mean, it's not like an amazingly formal, like our regular board meetings are. It would just be being able to meet. It can be just via Zoom. It doesn't have to be in person. It can either be phone calls. It can even just be email correspondence between members. The major thing that the permitted interaction group does is allow more than just 2 members to discuss subject matters that it's established for. So, it really can be as minimal of a obligation as you need it to be to fit into your, life schedule.
Okay, thank you. Sure, I'll be a part of it.
Is that something we need some motion on?
You'll need to make the motion for the members, and we'll just call it a reestablishment of the legislative committee for the 2024 session.
I will use your words. I'd like to make a motion to reestablish the permitted interaction group for the 2024 legislative session. Okay. And we would like to add Lorna Hu to that. Good. Okay. Are there any objections from the board members? Okay, hearing none, the motion passes. We have a new member for the PIG group. All right, moving on to sub item B under agenda item 5. That is the telehealth and remote practice. The board would like to discuss the subject of remote practice and training by the use of telehealth modalities as they relate to the practice of speech pathology and audiology. And
Hi, Chair. This is Christopher. So the reason I added this on is I wanted this to be established as kind of just an ongoing conversation. You don't have to discuss it every meeting. You can defer on the subject if there's nothing new, but the idea is that these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sub topics really represent what the board is looking at as far as issues within the statutes and the rules. The telehealth, for example, the board has discussed this multiple times recently, and in relation to the ASLPIC. I think, Lorna, in one of the last meetings, you had expressed interest in establishing telehealth legislation to coincide with, if at all, the state accepts the compact, so that our own state licensees are at least adhering to something similar, or at least equivalent to what the compact will do. Because we're currently, right now, our statutes are silent on that subject, so. That was the prior major reason why it was added to the agenda. That's why I think it's always good to have there, so that you guys can bring up any new information.
So yeah, can I speak?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So I guess if the compact is established, then the compact rules would supersede state rules if we accept it, or how does that work? I mean, I just think we need regulations in place so that, you know, ethically the providers would abide by them.
I know there's a precedent set by the medical board to enter telehealth language into the statute. It is specified to the practice, you know, of that board, or that board represents. Whether or not there are any variations between the SLP and audiology with regard to the use of telehealth, which I think I've brought up in meetings before, would be something that this board would have to discern. And that would modify language that would go into a statute with regard to telehealth. My suggestion to the board is to form draft language that you would accept with regard to telehealth, based on your guys' expertise and the practice here in the state. There is a difference between, in my mind, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, there's a difference between inter-county practice even here in Hawaii versus the mainland. So those are the types of things that should be brought, I recommend, from the board members into the meeting with your expertise and your practice. But yeah, I believe with regard to your question, Lorna, as far as the superseding, I think what was said that that would only pertain to the people who are utilizing the compact. So those outside of the compact, the state's own licenses would have to follow the telehealth language in our chapter. Whether or not the conflict matters, like you said, that's still to be seen. There isn't
Got it.
anything else.
Lorna, were you gonna say anything? I didn't ask. Is there any public testimony on this item?
Thank you, Chair. We do not have anyone requesting to provide oral testimony.
Thank you. In the interest of time, does the board have any other comments or questions about this item? It's gonna be a topic we continue discussing. Okay. Move on to the next item. Yeah. Okay, moving on to subsection C. The Board of Speech Pathology and Audiology would like to discuss section 468E-6, which establishes the board and its makeup in relation to the board meeting and administrative matters being hindered by limits on such things as quorum, such as one public member must be in attendance. Is there any public testimony on this item?
Thank you, Chair. We do not have anyone requesting to provide oral testimony.
Leo Fernandez, do you want to make some comments on this?
Yeah, thank you. So the reason I brought this up was our the hindrance to our meetings. You know, unfortunately, the burden really gets heavy on all you guys right now because we have only quorum members. But also Dr. Chen, you know, being the only public member, he has to shift everything around in his surgery schedule just to be here, and much appreciated, by the way. And thank you. But, you know, to save on that, you know, it does state in the statutes that we have to have one public member present. The reason for that, I would have to go into legislative history to find out. But the idea behind public meetings is to have the public involved, so not just the professions. And I can understand that when that section was established, they meant that to be the case. We kind of have difficulty finding public members. And so that does cause a problem for this specific board because of that language. And I was wondering the board's feelings on amending that to remove the public member attendance for the purposes of establishing quorum, but not to exclude the public in any way. We would still have our actually 3 public members.
Not to eliminate public members from the board, which
Right.
we can do, yes. But I think, yeah, this board has that special public member attendance requirement.
So in order to, so if I'm understanding correctly, in order to establish quorum, at the moment, we need to have a public member, but we are looking at the possibility of not necessarily having a public member to establish quorum, but still remain on the board. That's to provide input. Okay. So is that something that we
How you
can
feel about it?
decide, right?
No, you don't have to decide, but I mean, how do you feel about it? Because I can go back to the drawing table with Chris's help and try and set something up. And then,
I mean, I think I'm okay with it as long as we continue to get input from the public and we invite that. I think that would be okay. I don't know. Vice Chair Roth, I mean,
Well, correct, if we don't have a choice regardless, it has to be there. So.
until we can find
Until we can find somebody else. Is there any limit to how the?
Right now, it does those sections usually establish the membership, like what it's consisted of. So yeah, it'll usually include at least 2 public members. This board has 3 with the caveat that the 3rd is a otorhinolaryngologist. So that's a very specific position. And one that I never thought we would fill, but thank you again, Dr. Chen.
That's what you're saying, it all rides on
I mean, Ryan,
Dr.
Yes.
Chen, do you have any comments as the public member?
I mean, the subject's interesting, but I think it a lot of it doesn't really pertain to me. So I mean, I feel like I don't necessarily have to be here for any of this to occur. You know, while it's nice, I do agree. I think you'd probably be more flexible without me having to be part of the quorum.
Marna, any comments on that?
No, I don't have any comments. I love having Dr. Chen a part of it, though. But he's got a busy schedule.
sorry,
Okay,
I'm loving that delay.
okay, so we're not making any decisions today, is that correct? We just wanted to bring it up for discussion and then possibly put it on a future agenda?
I have a question. Is that something that has to, other than us agreeing on it, is that something that has to be put out for like? All right, so is it an informal thing that we can change within the bylaws?
So because it's established in the chapter, it'll have to be a bill. amended. So that, you know, there's always the opportunity for the public to help the board in having a bill, you know, introduced. As far as whether or not the board could try and get it included in the admin bill, that's something that I would have to go to look into and see if it would be considered administrative.
I'm just to weigh in there. I think it would, because usually board makeup is usually an administrative matter, and there have been other boards. I mean, it doesn't happen very often that you change how the board is composed, but that can be done in an admin bill. Okay. Yeah.
There you go. We do that, and then so if there's any other kind of admin bill type changes, we can be compiling those, and then with the idea that if our division does call for requests, then we can have one prepared.
So let's move on to the next item. It's D under agenda item 5, and that is licensure requirements and ASHA certification. We're going to review the requirements for licensure via meeting the requirements of ASHA certification, provisional licensure, and licensure by examination. We would like to see if the requirements set forth in Chapter 468E, HR, and the Hawaii Revised Statute, and 16 to 100 in the Hawaii Administrative Rules for examination are current with national standards and need to be updated by legislation or rules change.
That's kind of a big one.
Yeah.
So that might be something you table, but
Yeah.
I mean, the idea is that I think the rules are outdated with regard to numbers and everything.
Right.
If you want to, if the board would like to see its own standards for licensure match ASHA's CCC standards for speech pathologists, then you really will probably need to do rule change. Again, we'll have to look and see if that legislative change would need to happen for that. I don't think so, because the actual requirements for the degree and all that stuff is in the rules. Right? So I think it would be a rule change. So
Need the hours.
yeah,
Right, that was the main.
yeah, right. Because I think we're now lesser.
Right.
And then also I think audiology has changed a little bit as well. So that's there again. It's an item that you can bring into a meeting so that we can discuss and then try to maybe start beginning in a rule change process.
Okay.
Would this, I'm sorry,
No, go ahead.
would this be something that would, we would go through a whole rule change that we would do the contact with it to proceed all of it?
Maybe without knowing specifics, like a specific change, I couldn't say for sure or but
Yeah,
possibly.
I mean, that was my takeaway from what she was saying, is that if we adopted as part of, if we become part of the contract, that we keep that part of. I mean, that all of our rules will.
Not really. It would only be, again, for those who are using the compact privilege. So, but if we follow the logic, then yeah, if there is a conflict between the compact language and our chapter, and the compact supersedes on that specific subject, if there is a rule based on that statute, then I could see there might be an issue, but outside of that and outside of specific context, you may want to just like pull back and, guys.
If you're the home state, you should have to follow the verification, and if your rules is less than what the other states would require, then I think that is conflict and part of the state.
That's something I would think so. That's something that you have to ask about.
So maybe update the rule change to adopt the options. Instead of specifying a specific number of hours, that might change over time. So then you can just adopt there. So
True.
if it does change, then you don't have to change your rules.
True. I mean, I've seen other chapters who say something along those lines, like, you have to show that you can meet the standards of whatever associations, or that are current. But, whether or not that's it's gotta be more than that, like an actually list things, I'm not sure. I know the rules right now do. So we will have to update those, or we can wipe them out, put in that more general language. I think that is a rule change that I'll have to have.
I think this is, oh, public testimony on this item as well. Every single sub-item. Okay, is there any public testimony on this item on licensure requirements?
Thank you, Chair. We do not have anyone requesting to provide oral testimony.
Thank you. Right, any other comments or questions? And I think we will table this and come back to this at a future meeting. All right, let's move on to agenda item. Well, C. No, I mean E. We kind of E, renewals, continuing education, and ASHA certification. So the board would like to review possible legislative or rule changes to address whether a speech pathologist or audiologist licensed by holding national certifications such as ASHA's Certificate of Clinical Competence or the American Board of Audiology certification must maintain their said certification after obtaining licensure. And I believe at the present time, you do not need to, you use it to gain licensure and then you can let your CU go. Is there any public testimony on this item?
Thank you, Chair. We do not have anyone requesting to provide oral testimony.
Thank you. All right, any board members have questions or comments about this item?
I don't see the issue if we'll drop it after they get their licensure, if that's something that is. They're very expensive. And, or unless you're supervising students who require it for their own ASHA. There's really not that much, I think, at least for audiology, there's very little benefit to keep it. ABA also very expensive. And it should be on the person to decide whether or not they want to keep their associations, and if they drop it, they're the ones who have to work to get it back. So I don't think that that's, personally, I don't think that that's an issue. For me, I'll keep my C's until I want to give supervise. So that's something that's effective. I don't think that it's permanent, as long as I use some sort of, do whatever. Most places, especially if you work in a place of us, in a hospital, there are CE requirements for this. For us, even if this thing doesn't apply.
I think that's important, right? Not all settings require CE use, so they rely on maintaining your ASHA certification so that you continue to get the CE use. And if we don't have that for our licensing, that could be problematic if your setting doesn't require you to have that.
But we could require it for state licensure. It could become part of the language for the state instead of requiring them to maintain that, because basically, I don't know, to me, the state doesn't gain anything from having people do it other than knowing that somebody else is tracking the RC.
Yeah, and some states do.
Some states do track this.
I think generally and typically here in Hawaii, when it comes to CEs, there really is no like set language for everyone. So like some may allow for, like, say, something arbitrary, like they'll allow the transcripts for all their CE courses in a bank from a banking service as opposed to the individual certificates. Others don't, they just only will accept the certificates, at least the archaic language does. It makes things like that. But then, like, you know, like you were bringing up, there would be sort of two classes of licensees. There would be those who aren't ASHA and those who are ASHA. And those who are ASHA, I would hope that any CE program that would be established by this board would not be over and above what they already have to do to maintain their triple Cs. It would be an extra burden.
Right.
I mean, my suggestion, if the board does wish to deal with the continuing education, which the board does not have right now, then looking at maintaining ASHA certification versus not maintaining it, you know, that could be an option, like you said. You know, like if you maintain your triple Cs, then you can just provide proof that you still are maintaining your triple Cs instead of the CE, something like that, which could make things easier for us on the admin side, but also for licensees to get the better training and not so much cater to what they have to do for the license.
I don't know how we would, because right now when you renew your CE, you just check a box. Saying that you met the requirements. So I'm not sure how you would have to prove.
I mean, ASHA does audit,
Yeah,
so I mean, there's that too.
I mean, there's the registry, if you pay for that, you can submit that, but people don't all pay for the registry, so.
Okay. So it's not even a given that you've done your CE to maintain your triple Cs.
It's not given, but there's always the opportunity for an audit.
Right. You could,
And I've known people who've been audited by ASHA.
okay,
And ethically, I mean, yeah, they're saying that you met the requirements, so.
right.
I mean, I got audited by ASHA and they were like, oh, but you're registered, so, I mean, it's a random draw, they're like, you got tagged to be audited, but I gave the registry. So that, so we can see that you did it, so don't worry about it, you know, like.
Okay.
I mean, there's a random draw across the country for ASHA, so it can literally happen to anybody, whatever. Which is great, but. I don't know, I do think that if you're going to allow people to, which we do, allow people to not have their Cs or ABA or AAA once they are no longer. And once they're licensed here, we don't have to keep it correctly, that's our language, right?
Yeah, I mean, right now it's just, there's nothing in the renewal
Right.
section that says you have to maintain your triple Cs.
Right,
Yes.
but there's also nothing that says. There should be.
No,
I think that,
right.
Even if there's a checkbox.
yeah. I think that to make it equivalent is gonna be, because you're on a 2-year renewal cycle and your certification maintenance is a 3-year cycle.
Uh-huh.
So,
Yeah, that doesn't even.
divide it 10 a year. I don't know. Right. Find an average.
Okay.
Your licenses allow you to become.
I think so.
So clear, a licensee is pursuing further license learning and active. Are you going to waive that requirement if you require them to know that certification?
I mean. It's interesting, right? You think that you would. Stay up to date with it. Oh, especially because of that. That's all.
Or just something to ponder on.
Lorna, I see that your hand is raised. Did you have something to ask?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be nice for us to discuss it further in our permitted interaction group as well, rather than to prolong this meeting, just because I think we should look at CEUs from a professional standpoint, as we look at the quality of services that we provide, because if it's not required in a way, I just think we should take a look at it
Right,
further.
I think there are a lot of things that the board should consider. Every profession is different. The strength of their CEU systems and offerings are really dependent on the national level of standardization. There are some professions that don't have that, so those boards tend to have to vet all of the CE that is coming in. And then if you want to know what that's like, you can talk to me or Rochelle with regard to Cairo or optometry. It's a very in-depth process to approve, review, and let everybody know in the public that those courses are allowed. And then check that once renewal comes around. Double check. It's a lot. Other professions are very standard, like psychology or medical, where as long as it's APA or as long as it's AMA, it's fine. And it can be as simple as that. But these are the considerations you should look at with regard to your own professions, so that, is there enough to draw from for the state, that our licensees would get options instead of just, I have to do this, or that one or this. Which the board could also do, but yeah, there is a lot to discuss on that.
So I suggest, again, we maybe discuss this in the permitted interaction group and table that at this moment so that we can move on to our next agenda item. Okay. Okay. Item F under the 5th agenda item is the speech language pathologist assistant. So we would like to continue discussing the use of SLPAs in the practice of speech pathology in Hawaii. The board may discuss training options in Hawaii, utilizations of SLPAs in practice, and possible regulations of SLPAs. Is there any public testimony on this item?
Thank you, Chair. We do not have anyone requesting to provide oral testimony.
Thank you. Do the board members have any comments or questions on this item? Lorna, I see your hand is raised.
I guess this is another topic that we probably need a group discussion in our permitted interaction group, because it's probably a long, lengthy discussion rather than what we're doing at this moment.
Sure. I just would like to share as well that I did ask around a little bit about this. And the University of Hawaii Outreach College has a course series that you do it through the interdisciplinary studies, and you can take these courses to get you to the prerequisites, and then you can apply to the graduate program. However, in looking at these prerequisites, it lines up almost to what is required in the SLPA program. So there's just 2 courses that I'm not sure on that I want to check in a little bit more, but I thought that I would bring that up I know that we have discussed this. And so the majority of the courses line up. There are some additional requirements in terms of becoming a SLPA, taking those courses, and then I was looking at what ASHA requires. But I think that could be a possible option that we might want to look at and see if that would work for people, and then we would have to talk about how we would regulate them. Lorna?
Yeah, I mean, I think we should probably take a look at it and then discuss it further. I mean, unless we just discuss it here.
No,
but it sounds like a longer discussion. Because I've just heard so many complaints about communication aids not being properly trained and getting the information, yet they're in positions that are providing care to our children in the DOE. Maybe not in your district, but I've heard specifically complaints in the Honolulu and Windward districts.
Yeah, and I think that's because the requirements for communications aids are different than what would be required of a SLPA. So I think that is.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's a position change to a SLPA versus a communication aid, but you know that that might be harder to recruit, right? But you know, as a provider, you would want somebody with the training over somebody who has not had proper training or education, right? But that some of them may not even have been interested or, you know, use that education piece to get into the position and just have been grandfathered in.
Thank you.
But it would be nice if our state would have, you know, that kind of training offered. And we may actually, through that, recruit for speech pathology in the future.
Thank you. So, Lorna, you're right. In the interest of time, I think that this session should be held during PIG group.
Yeah, it's just too long.
And then we shall continue that. So any other just basic discussion on this before we talk about our next meeting? Okay. Then on to agenda item number 6. Our next meeting is scheduled for January 30th.
Typically, yes.
Tentatively January 30th. But please look on the board's website for updates on the schedule. I can move on to the next one. Yeah, okay. Okay, and agenda item 7, with no further business, I'll adjourn the meeting at 3:55. Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you.